Hey, it's Coach 2K with Coach2K.com, and in this video, I was going to start working on how to begin learning an offense for your team. So, if you've been following my steps, obviously you got to pick a team first, then you kind of got to look at its roster and see what you've been given. And I always suggest that you start working on offense first and not worry so much about defense because you need a good offense in order to play a good defense because you got to be able to score on one end to keep your defense playing with all five guys. So, um, again, to begin with, I recommend you just start working on offense. And then you get in, then you got to start learning the controls. And then once you kind of have the basic controls down, then you got to start thinking about, well, what am I going to do when I have the ball? So you can see here that I'm in freestyle scrimmage, and my team's in here working. Now, what a lot of people do when they get the game is they just come down and they just start either they just drive to the basket with a guy or they just take this guy and run him over here and then pass. And then there's like no rhyme or reason. They just, they're just running around trying to get something going until the computer breaks them down, until they maybe turn it over or they just take a bad shot. So that's the first thing that I see people do. Now, the second thing that I see people do that, and they're good players. There's nothing wrong with it, but basically, um, they use their offensive strategy as a four-out, one-in set. And you'll see this is probably the most common thing you're going to see in NBA 2K. It's just four guys out, one in, and it's not actually set up that way. Here, let's see if we can run a possession here and get see if they come down and set up better. Usually when you change the offensive strategy, it doesn't work quite right the first time. So let's see here. Let them score. Come on, Joe. Shoot it. Sometimes they don't score. Don't shoot. Come on, let's go. Can't. If you're going to sit there and mess around on. Come on, shoot the ball. There we go. Now we got him shooting. Okay. All right, so let's see if it set up. Oh, it went back to them. This is the bad thing about scrimmage mode is there they go. Now they shoot. Okay. All right, so let me get the ball to George Hill here and come down. The offense, I believe, should set up kind of in a four-out, one-in kind of set. So this is generally what people, how they play 2K. A lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, they'll go to four-out, one-in, and then they'll call for screen, and then they'll run the screen and try and pop a three-point guy open if they can't get to the basket off the pick and the roll. So, I see that a ton. Four out, one in. It's the most common thing, and the reason it works so well it just spreads the defense out. But I'm so sick of seeing four out, one in being played that I felt like I should actually just say something, start talking about offense. So I'm not a big believer in constantly picking and rolling every time. It works. It works well against the CPU. It seems harder to execute this year than it was in past 2Ks. They've kind of toned it down a little bit. But I'm not a big fan of just sitting here and calling pick and rolls all day and calling that my offense. So this is what I suggest. So let's go back to the basic default. So the team's in the default freelance options. So when you come down and you're new to the team, you've got to figure out, okay, what do I do to get these guys open? And just trying to force everything. So I always start with my superstar. I start with one player and I start learning what he can do all over the court. And so I will work with him on one specific play until I am comfortable running that particular play. So you can see here he has it in the post, and so we'll try and do what we can to learn here and see I did a bad job there. So I might call that play 100 times until I'm satisfied that I know everything I can about that play. Now, personally, I don't like to run it in scrimmage mode. I actually like to run it in play now, and let me show you what I do. So it'll take a second to get over there. But the idea here is that you'll take each player and you'll learn all the plays in their default playbook. And I know the freelance offenses are in the game, but I'm not personally a big fan of those. I like to know where my guys are going to be, and I actually like to play call. So the way I like to go about doing that is by going into play now and setting up a game. And so let's go in here and do that. And so my roster is the way that I want it. So I don't worry about messing with anything just to practice. I like to practice in game situations because momentum and all that, I don't think that comes into play in scrimmage mode. So I'm not a big fan of actually working inside scrimmage or practice plays, although a lot of people are. I like to do all my work in game situations versus the CPU. Alright, so let's get in here and let me tell you how I set things up. Every dime is a flake. I don't care what you do, it's almost impossible to shut the soundtrack completely off. So, even though it's not even on. Alright, so let's go into the settings here, and I begin this kind of work on rookie. And the reason I do that is because if you're playing on Hall of Fame level, some of us can learn that way, but it's a lot more difficult to learn everything because the defense is just smothering you and it's easy to get frustrated. So I'll put it on rookie level, and then I'll go into the game and make sure I got my camera set the way I want it. I do. And now I have the pressure of the clock, and I have the pressure of the pressure of the actual game situation. So I'll call George here, and I'll call his first play, and we'll see what's happening. Now, defense to begin with, I set the POEs on the same POE every time. So, whoops. It'll take me a minute to do that. Alright, so I come down and we'll work on the same play. And we'll just see what's available here. Oh. Alright, so there I tried something and I made a mistake. Alright, so let's set my POEs here. I always start POEs like this. And then I don't worry about those POEs anymore. So let's go back. And then I experiment with this play and see what I can do. Now defense, since we're here, my plan is to sit here and stay in front of my guy. And rookie's a good mode to work on that because they'll just attack you. Alright, now I outrun the ball. I come down, I call the same play again. So we just see what's going to transpire. Oh. Let's go in here too, since we got some people viewing. They can ask questions. Let's see. People come up here and alright, so now on defense, I keep my defense within the three-point area and I stay in front of the ball. Okay, there we got beat, but we don't worry about it. Okay. Now, this time I'm going to call the play from over here. So the first play in the book. And I'm not going to go into the post this time. I'm going to rotate it. And I experiment with all the different options that play provides. And you're going to get all kinds of options in Rookie. And they'll tell you what to look for. My favorite team is the Pacers. Alright, so let's call it again here. And then I call it from each side of the floor. This time I wait. They got that back cut. And see, Paul George comes to the top there. Now, alright, so now, next thing I do is you see Paul George has the ball this time. I'm going to call the play for him. ISO 1-3 motion. And just see what happens here. I'm going to let the play get set up. Up. And so this is how I learned my playbook. Alright, so I go in, up, alright, so anyway, that's what I do. So you could see that I call the same play every time down against the CPU just to learn how to number one, get used to calling the plays, and then I'll do that for all the plays in the book. And I'll start with the first play, and then I'll go through the second play and the third play until I've learned all of Paul George's plays. And then I will do that for each of the players. But usually what I try and do is work with one specific player on the roster first, and usually I try and make that my best player so that I can kind of get used to what they do. Now, the game comes default loaded with all of these plays in your playbook. Now they may not be the best plays for your team. In fact, this playbook, the Pacers run zipper plays all the time, and there's like only one zipper play in the whole playbook. So eventually you'll want to kind of maybe get in there and tweak your playbook to make it more like the real team. But when you're first starting out, what you want to do is just go with what you've been given. And then that way, every mode you play it in, online, offline, it's all the same, and you get to know the team as it's given to you. So I call this learning on default, using the team as it comes without trying to change it in any way, just get used to what it can do. And then after you try these plays for a while, eventually you'll see things open up, especially if you're doing it on rookie level to start with, that you wouldn't necessarily see and be able to react to on Hall of Fame mode or even Superstar or All-Star, because it slows the game down for you a little bit. You can kind of take advantage of those opportunities. So after you pick a team and you do your roster, you look at your roster and see what the offensive players can do. You go in, you start learning the controls, and then you start looking at your playbook and you start looking to call plays. So I'm Coach 2K. I hope that strategy helps you out. And if we ever get a chance to play sometime, hopefully I'll see you on the court.